The new offset. The street was a study in gray, curb paint peeling like old skin under the stuttering hum of a fluorescent light. He stood in the temporary office. A prefab box dropped onto the pavement. The pen, tethered by a grimy plastic coil, felt heavy in his hand as he signed the clipboard. Each letter was a deliberate, final stroke. Back in the Stark room, he unrolled a large map, its corners held down by a cold coffee mug and a stapler. A bright yellow line snaked across the grid of streets, a route he knew by heart. But today, a new line, a pedestrian revision, branched off, bending sharply away from a familiar residential block, away from a single door. He watched from the window as a contractor hammered a sign into the dirt. New walkway. It stood exactly where the old, straight path used to be, a wooden declaration that erased what was. The yellow line on his map was no longer just a plan. It was becoming a reality, carved into the earth. He walked the revised route, his boots echoing on the fresh pavement. The new path felt sterile, efficient. It led him to the edge of the old way, and he stopped, looking across the now barren strip of land toward the door. The brass plaque was scuffed, the number barely legible. He could have walked that straight line, one last time. He stood there for a long moment, hearing the faint shift of weight from inside, a sound he recognized. But his hand never raised to knock. Instead, he pulled out his phone. In his calendar, a recurring event was marked return. His thumb hovered over the word. He opened his worn paper planner, found the same entry, and drew a thick black line through it. He was choosing this new, detached route. As he turned to leave, a woman holding a manila folder approached him, her expression unreadable. "Does it start today?" she asked, her voice quiet. "The change," he nodded, the words catching in his throat. "It has to be logged." Back in his car, the engine rumbled to life. The traffic light turned green, and the cars around him began to move forward. He looked at his phone one last time, at the pending submission for the route change. With a final decisive tap, he pressed delete on the old way. The system confirmed the revision. The street carried him away, and he didn't look back. The light keeps working. The parking lot is empty. The asphalt is cracked, patched in darker squares. A wall runs along one side, once white, now dull to the color of old paper. Near its base, paint has peeled in thin curls. A light fixed high above hums softly, not enough to brighten the space, only enough to flatten it. Somewhere beyond the buildings, a truck passes on the highway. The sound thins quickly and is gone. A plastic cup lies on its side near the curb. It moves once when the wind reaches it, then settles again. The light shifts slightly as a cloud crosses, and the wall takes on a cooler tone. The shadow of a metal pole stretches across it at an angle, broken where the surface dips inward. At the edge of the light, something smaller disturbs the stillness. Not a sound. Only a brief change where darkness gathers, and loosens again. The child steps into the light. His shoes scuff the asphalt without sound. He raises one arm and watches the shadow lift with it, longer than his body, bent where the wall bends. When he lowers the arm, the shadow folds back. He moves closer. The shadow grows darker, thicker at the edges. When he shifts his weight, it breaks briefly at a crack in the paint, then joins again. He lifts both arms. The shadow widens uneven, one side heavier than the other. He holds the position until his shoulders tire and his arms drop on their own. The light thins at the edges. When he raises his arm again, a shadow lags, softening before it reaches the wall. Its outline blurs where it once held. He keeps his arm raised longer than before, then lets it fall. A car passes somewhere beyond the lot. The sound drifts in and out, uneven. The shadow drops too far, stretching past where it should end, then pulls itself back. He stops. His arms hang at his sides. The light hums, steady. He steps closer until his shoes touch the base of the wall, The concrete is cool through the soles. He leans back against it. The shadow presses flat and darkens where his body meets the surface. The light shifts. The shadow slides to one side. He does not move. After a while, he pushes himself away. The space between him and the wall fills with light again. He takes 2 steps back. The shadow loosens and fades into the uneven gray. The light weakens, not going out, only losing its edge. The wall looks flatter now. The cracks are shallow. The peeled paint barely shows. The hum continues. The child stands just outside the brightest part of the light. His outline no longer reaches the wall. The shadow stays close to his feet. He turns and walks toward the darker end of the lot. His steps are quiet. By the time he reaches the edge, the light has settled into its dull glow. The wall holds no shapes. Later, the lot is empty again. The light keeps working. From the highway comes another passing sound, then silence. The plastic cup by the curb turns once more and stops. The night settles into the spaces between things. The architecture of erasure. The station stayed open later than the city admitted. Lights remained on because turning them off required paperwork no one finished. Forms left half-signed in drawers. A building hummed with old electricity and ventilation that never fully shut down. Air moving in uneven bursts through vents stained gray. He worked there after midnight, after the last official departure, when only delayed buses crept in, engines ticking as if unsure they should still exist, heat lifting faintly from their hoods. He walked the length of the main hall again, counting steps without meaning to. The floor had been cleaned badly, leaving streaks that caught the light and made it look wetter than it was, tacky in places. Benches were bolted down in uneven rows, metal cold along their edges. A few people waited without luggage, which unsettled him. They sat still, eyes forward, coats folded beside them or worn indoors, as if the building were holding them in place. He watched how they shifted their weight, checked their phones, and then stopped, screens dimming, how they learned the limits of the space without being told. He kept sentences ready. He carried them the way others carried keys, aware of their shape without looking. Each time he passed the glass booth near the entrance, the words adjusted themselves, shorter, less specific, safer. He imagined them fitting between the hum of the lights and the occasional announcement that no longer mattered, distorted by the speakers. He never imagined how they would sound out loud, only how they would behave if released, where they might pause or in. The supervisor arrived late, as usual. She moved quickly, coat still on, eyes already scanning the departure board, heels clicking once before she adjusted her stride. She took in the room with a glance and went straight to the back office, badge brushing the doorframe. He followed at a distance that felt appropriate, close enough to register, but not close enough to require acknowledgement. He watched her hands as she logged in, the way she leaned closer when something didn't load, shoulders tightening. He noted the tension and matched it, slowing when she slowed. She left again, heading toward the platforms. He stayed behind, listening to her footsteps fade. The system console waited in its alcove, half hidden by a pillar painted over too many times, layers visible where the corners chipped. The interface lagged when touched, responding a beat late. He knew where it froze and where it didn't. He also knew which routes were considered expendable, marked for review, but never removed, because removal meant admitting the schedule was broken, dates left unchanged. He brought the sentences closer, running them through once more. They lined up neatly. He imagined her turning back, noticing him there, waiting. He imagined her seeing him clearly, not as part of the station, but as someone interrupting it, standing apart from the fixtures. The fear arrived before the image finished forming. His body reacted faster than his thoughts, fingers already moving, shoulders set. He accessed the maintenance layer. It took longer than usual. The cursor blinked. He watched it, feeling exposed even though no one was looking, The glow reflected faintly in the glass. When the list loaded, he scrolled slowly, fingertip resting too long on the trackpad. The route number appeared exactly where he expected. A regional line that ran once a night and rarely filled, its notes unchanged for months. He selected it. The system asked for confirmation in a way that suggested it didn't expect an answer, the text small and flat. The line disappeared, not hidden, not archived, removed. The board in the main hall flickered once, then settled, the refresh barely noticeable. Somewhere, a printer in the back office would later produce an error report no one would read carefully, pages curling in the tray. The change would persist. Schedules would adjust around the absence. Drivers would be reassigned. Passengers would stop expecting something they had barely trusted before. He stepped back, heel catching slightly on the edge of the mat. The sentences loosened, unused, but altered by proximity to action. He felt the space behind him before he turned. She had returned to the hall and was standing near the benches, watching a man who had fallen asleep upright, chin against his chest. She made a decision about him without touching him. He saw it in the shift of her stance, preparing to wake him or let him be. She noticed the board, her head tilted slightly. She walked closer, scanning for the missing line, eyes moving in a practiced pattern. Her expression changed, not dramatically, but enough that he recognized it. She looked toward the alcove. He was already there, hands visible, posture neutral, weight evenly distributed. He felt the words press forward, trying to arrange themselves one last time. She approached. She gestured toward the screen, palm angled inward. He followed the gesture with his eyes. He nodded once, too quickly, neck tightening. She made another gesture, smaller, sharper, fingers closing. He felt heat rise in his face. The sentences fragmented. He reached for the safest version and found it unusable. She waited. The waiting was deliberate. He could tell by the way she didn't move, by how she let the station's noise fill the gap, the distant rattle of a cart, the ventilation cycling. He adjusted his footing. He considered undoing the change and knew it was already too late. The system would not restore what it no longer recognized. She exhaled through her nose and looked past him. Back at the hall, she made a decision and stepped away. Her pace was controlled, but it left no room for pursuit. He stayed where he was. The man on the bench woke and stood, confused, blinking under the lights. The supervisor guided him toward the exit with a light touch on his arm. The doors slid shut behind them. The hall emptied. The board held steady, its emissions now normal. The lights continued their hum. He stood alone in the center of the station, the sentences finally inert, and after the last movement faded, the building settled into silence. Retention policy update. The light above the intake desk hums at a steady pitch, neither loud nor soft enough to be noticed unless it stops. The floor is sealed concrete, pocked where a ladder once scraped, and my shoes stick when I shift my weight. I don't move much. The air has pressure to it, the way rooms do when they are underground, and the doors are meant to stay closed. The wall clock says 14:17. The message console blinks once and goes still. I read what is there, because reading is what the console is for. The words look smaller than they should, compressed by the glass. I can hear my own breathing, but it doesn't seem to be happening in the room. The intake door is behind me. It opens outward, which means I can't lean back without hitting it. The environment is arranged to keep bodies in certain orientations. This is not an accusation. It is a description. When I reach for the keyboard, the desk edge presses into my ribs. The desk has always been too high. I type with my wrists bent. The message waits. It is a request framed as a question, which is common. It asks whether a record exists, and if so, where. I know where. The knowledge arrives with the faint metallic taste that sometimes precedes other memories. I am suddenly 9 years old, Or maybe I am holding a 9-year-old's hands because the scale is wrong. The memory comes without order. A public pool locker room, white tiles, the echo of feet. Someone says my name from far away. I am told later that this happened, that I stood still while the whistle kept blowing. The stillness returns now. I tell myself I am verifying indices. The keyboard makes its expected sound. Speech, when it appears in my head, is already edited. I don't hear what I would say aloud. I hear the version that would be written down later. The console asks again. I don't answer yet. The room smells faintly of dust and warm plastic. There is a rack to my left with labeled drives. The labels are old enough to have been printed with a dot matrix printer. The letters have gaps. One of them corresponds to the request. I know because I filed it myself, or rather, placed it where the filing system indicated. Filing systems have reasons that can be recited. The memory interrupts again, this time of a train stalled between stations. The lights flicker. A man clears his throat and stops. Nobody speaks. Later, when the train moves, the movement becomes the explanation. I swivel the chair a few degrees. The chair resists. It catches on a seam in the floor. The rack is close enough that I can reach without standing. Standing would require navigating the narrow space, and there is a rule about keeping the aisle clear. The drive is heavier than it looks. When I pull it out, the rack emits a brief chirp, acknowledging removal. That sound will be logged somewhere else. I carry the drive to the terminal with the red bordered screen. The red border indicates actions that cannot be reversed. I insert the drive. The screen changes. There is a progress bar with no numbers. I select the option that corresponds to sanitization. It does not say erase. It says comply with retention policy update. The update was circulated last quarter. I did not comment on it. While the bar advances, my mind offers an image of a kitchen table with a cracked corner. There is a letter on it, folded twice. I recall its weight, how the paper resisted being unfolded. I remember deciding to leave it folded. The bar continues. When the bar completes, the terminal emits a tone lower than the rack's chirp. The drive is now a blank in the system's understanding. The action alters the external archive permanently. I remove the drive and return it to the rack. The label remains. I sit again. The desk presses into my ribs. The console blinks. I type a response that reflects the current state of the archive. It is accurate. Accuracy has gradients. I send it. There is a vibration in the walls that I identify as the elevator passing somewhere above. The room does not have an elevator, but buildings do. Another memory intrudes, brief. A hand hovering over a phone, the screen lit, then dimming. I am aware that I am shaping these recollections as they arrive. The truth, if there is one, remains distributed. The shift continues. The clock advances in increments I can track. I perform checks listed on the laminated sheet taped to the desk. Each item has a box. I fill the boxes. The hum remains steady. At 17 o'clock, I log out of the console. The logout screen thanks me. I stand carefully, avoiding the seam. The intake door opens outward as designed. I turn off the light. In the corridor, I pause at the sink, wash my hands for the recommended duration, dry them on the same paper towel dispenser, and place my badge in the tray. The corridor smells different at this hour, more cleaning solution than dust. The lights are on a timer that favors efficiency over comfort. They brighten when I step forward and dim behind me. My badge is gone, already sorted into a tray with others identical, except for the code. I take the stairs because the elevator is slow in the late afternoon. The stairs are concrete, unpainted, with a handrail that is cool regardless of season. The building holds me in a narrow channel of movement, down and then out. Outside, the street is in a state of partial closure. Cones redirect traffic in a way that suggests a plan, though no work is visible. I stand at the curb longer than necessary. The signal changes. The cars stop. I cross. A notification vibrates in my pocket. I do not look at it immediately. I am aware of how that delay could be described. When I do look, the screen shows a system update reminder. The wording is generic. It thanks me in advance. The memory comes without warning. A classroom with windows too high to see out of, the sound of chalk breaking. Someone asks a question that could be answered, and I remember not answering it. The teacher fills the space with an explanation that does not require my input. I walk to the transit stop. The shelter's glass is scratched with initials and dates, some crossed out. The schedule is posted, but inaccurate. Everyone knows this. A man beside me clears his throat and checks his watch. I note these actions as data points. When the bus arrives, the door exhales. I step on, tap my card. The reader beeps once. The beep confirms a transaction that cannot be undone. I choose a seat that faces forward. The bus moves. Buildings slide past in a way that implies continuity. My phone vibrates again. I open the update reminder. It asks for permission to install now or later. The options are evenly weighted. I select now. The screen goes dark and shows a progress circle. The circle completes. The phone restarts. I put it away. The memory intrudes again, this time of a hallway where lockers slam shut in sequence. I recall thinking that if I timed my steps correctly, I could avoid being seen. I get off the bus at my usual stop. The pavement here is uneven. One slab sits higher than the others. I step over it without looking. The building where I live is a stack of identical units, differentiated only by number. The lobby smells faintly of cooked onions. The mailboxes are arranged alphabetically. There is nothing new inside. In the elevator, a mirror reflects a version of me that appears compliant. I watch the numbers descend. At my floor, the doors open with a delay that has been logged before. The hallway carpet has been replaced in sections. The seams are visible. Inside my apartment, the air is still. I set my bag down in the same place. The furniture is arranged to allow movement without choice. I turn on the lamp by the window. The light falls where it always does, illuminating the table with the cracked corner. The letter is not there now. I open the refrigerator. The contents are arranged by size. I remove a container, heat it in the microwave for the indicated time. The microwave hums, stops, hums again. While it runs, I think of a database schema I once learned, how fields can be left null without error. I eat standing up because the chair is pushed in. Afterward, I rinse the container and place it on the drying rack. The rack is nearly full. Water drips into the tray below. I consider emptying the tray, then do not. On the desk in the corner, my personal terminal waits. I sit, log in. There is an alert about storage limits. I review the files, identify one that is redundant, and delete it. The system asks for confirmation. I confirm. The deletion propagates. The alert disappears. Outside, a siren passes and fades. Inside, the environment resumes its hold. I check the time, set an alarm for the morning at the same hour as always, plug in my phone, and turn off the lamp. Passing concrete holds the night a little longer, damp and cold, carrying the smell of metal, cheap coffee, and yesterday's rain pressed out of shoes. Light flickers under the arch, uncertain. Trains pass below with a hollow thunder that never quite reaches the body. People move through the space without stopping, coats closed, heads already elsewhere. Elias stands near a pillar where the paint has peeled to gray. He sets the case down carefully. The leather is worn smooth, colorless from years of hands and weather. He opens it and lifts the violin out. The wood is cool. He does not play yet. He waits, watching dust turn slowly in a thin blade of light until an express rushes through and the air shifts. A paper cup of coffee sits beside him, the rim softening where his fingers have held it too long. Steam fades quickly. He adjusts the instrument against his shoulder, tests the weight, the balance. The bow rests in his hand. Around him, the morning tightens into motion. He breathes once and listens to the space before sound enters it. He begins with batch. The first notes rise clean and narrow. They strike the tiled walls and come back thinned, stripped of warmth. People pass without looking. Shoes scuff, coats brush air. A train exhales somewhere below. The music keeps its shape, but the space refuses it. In the open case, a single dollar lies at the bottom, creased and soft. He put it there before he started. Coins arrive later, tossed without hands slowing down. Each one lands with a short, metallic click and is gone. He does not pause. His face stays still, eyes lifted slightly above the crowd. The bow moves evenly, as if this were a room meant for listening. The coffee cools beside him. A dark ring spreads under the cup where the paper has weakened. The melody repeats. The station does not change. The crowd thickens. Morning closes in on itself and becomes a single direction. Faces lose their edges. There are no expressions left, only movement measured in seconds. Hands hold phones and cups, eyes fixed on time. He feels the change before he sees it. The air grows tighter, louder, though nothing is said. He keeps playing. His fingers move faster now, cleaner. The sound thins further, pressed flat by bodies passing too close. Even if he stayed here until his hands failed, nothing in the flow would shift. The station does not resist him. It continues. He lowers the bow pressure until the notes barely lift from the strings. What remains is almost private, a line of sound meant only to confirm his own presence. He listens more than he plays, adjusting to the small space the music is allowed. Around him the current moves on, complete, untouched. The string gives way without warning. Not a cry, just a dry snap, like something old breaking at the wrong moment. The bow stops in mid-movement. His hand remains lifted for a second longer than necessary. Trains still move. Footsteps still scrape. He stands with the violin against his shoulder, the broken string slack and useless. He does not look down at it. He does not move. A man brushes past his elbow without noticing. The flow tightens, then loosens again. What had been playing is already forgotten, folded back into the general noise. He lowers the instrument and lets his arms rest. The moment closes on its own, leaving no mark beyond the loose end of wire against the wood. He closes the case and lifts it by the handle, feeling the familiar pull in his wrist. He moves with the others toward the exit, carried part of the way, then set down on the steps where the air changes. Outside, the wind is sharp and smells of wet pavement. Traffic waits at the light, engines idling, their sound steady and dull. He stops near the corner and takes out a cigarette. The flame wavers as he shields it with both hands, then settles. Smoke drifts low and breaks apart in the damp air. There is no hurry now. The case rests against his leg. He knows there is no money for dinner and no string for tomorrow, but the knowledge sits quietly. Across the street, a yellow taxi stands under the signal, its roof light glowing through the mist. When it moves, another takes its place. No claim was made. He arrived without urgency. The town lay low beneath a sky pressed close to the roofs, pale and undecided. There was no clear center, no place that gathered things together, just a road easing between buildings that stood where they always had, doing nothing to announce themselves. A sign hung crooked above a closed storefront. It had likely been that way for years. The air held no promise of rain. It simply was. He stopped near the car longer than necessary, not to look around, not to remember only because his body slowed before his thoughts did. The engine ticked as it cooled. He shut the door, waited, then locked it. The sound lingered. The roofs drew his attention. Some were tiled, others patched with dull metal sheets, their lines uneven. their angles tired. Antennas leaned slightly, as if no one had cared enough to straighten them. Paint peeled where it always peels. Nothing stood out, and that was what held him. He lifted his eyes. The sky was low, nearly colorless, stretched thin above the town. It was the same sky he had known elsewhere. Here it seemed misplaced. He looked at it longer than he meant to. He walked on, leaving the car behind. No one watched. The town moved at its own pace. In that rhythm, there was no space set aside for him, no rejection, no welcome. Only the fact that nothing waited. The diner stood close to the road, its windows washed pale by the light inside. He went in without checking the sign. The air smelled of coffee and something fried long ago. Tables were spaced too far apart, as if the room still expected more people than it ever got. He slid into a booth near the window. The vinyl seat sighed and settled. A waitress passed without looking at him. When she returned, he ordered coffee. His voice sounded ordinary. It did not ask for anything. The cup arrived already filled. Steam lifted briefly, then thinned. He wrapped his hands around it once, felt the heat, and let go. Outside, a truck passed and disappeared down the road. Inside, the coffee waited. He did not. He left the diner and walked without choosing a direction. The street took him in, narrow and unremarkable, its surface worn smooth by years of passing tires. The buildings stood close, as if to shorten the distance between them. He moved at the pace they allowed. The street ended sooner than he expected, not abruptly, just without ceremony. A storefront stood where his memory offered space, and a fenced lot where there should have been another block. He slowed, not confused, only briefly out of step. He stopped. There was no reason to. His feet remained where they were, while the street continued its quiet motion cars passing at a distance, a door opening and closing, a voice he could not place. A pane of glass caught his reflection. It was faint, broken by glare and dust. He looked at it without interest. The glass returned nothing. After a moment, he moved on. The street did not resist him. It closed in behind his steps, leaving no sign that he had paused there at all. The building stood a short distance from the road, set back just enough to seem intentional. Its walls were dull, the color flattened by time and weather. A narrow walkway led to the door, bordered by gravel that had not been raked in years. He stopped at its edge. The cold rose through the soles of his shoes. It stayed there. He moved forward, then stopped again in the same place, as if the distance had not changed. The windows faced outward, unguarded. One held a dim, steady light. The others were dark, reflecting only the sky and a slice of roofline. Curtains hung unevenly, as if adjusted once and then forgotten. He remained where he was. His hand lifted slightly, then stayed where it was. From inside came a sound soft, indistinct, too brief to place. It came again, shorter this time, closer. He did not move. The moment narrowed. The paint near the frame was cracked, flaking in small curls. A number was fixed above the door, its edges worn smooth. He noticed these things without touching them, as if contact might change their weight. Then he stepped back. He did not look again at the windows. The building stayed as it was, complete without him. He went back to the diner. The door opened with the same dull sound. Inside, the light held its place. The air carried the same flat warmth, but something moved louder now. A chair scraped too long. A voice carried farther than before. This time, he sat closer to the back. The table was clean, the surface worn smooth by countless hands. When coffee came, he nodded once. The cup stood between his hands. Steam lifted and thinned. He pushed it away before it cooled. People passed through the room in fragments. A jacket brushing a chair, a voice calling an order, the scrape of a stool. One laugh rose briefly, then stopped. None of it asked for his attention. He shifted in the booth. The seat gave a soft sound. His hand went to the edge of the table and rested there. The cup was still warm enough to hold. He left it. He reached into his pocket and placed a few bills on the table. They lay flat. At the counter, the waitress turned, spoke to someone, turned back. Plates clinked. A chair scraped the floor and was pulled in. No one looked toward his table. He stood and walked to the door. The bell gave its tired sound. He did not glance back. Outside, the air felt the same cool, without direction. He stopped near the edge of the lot. The road lay open, unremarkable, carrying its traffic past the town without concern. The roofs gathered his attention again. They formed a low, uneven line against the sky. From where he stood, they seemed closer together than before. He lifted his eyes. The sky was flat and pale, stretched thin above the roofs. Clouds drifted without purpose. For a moment, he stayed like that. Here, under this sky, he felt no claim. He lowered his gaze. The town remained in place, complete and unconcerned. He walked a short distance, then stopped again. The street lay open in front of him, empty enough to pass through without resistance. Light shifted slightly as a cloud moved on. It touched the roofs and the pavement and then settled. He stood with his hands at his sides,